Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. How the heck are you? I am Diana Clarion. I am the Lavender Lady. This is Coffee with Lavender, a second cup. Yes, we're having another show today because there's a very, very, very special guest on today. The
Is it
one.
the cat?
Today's guest is the one, the only, the brilliant, the beautiful Mr. Aron Ra. How the heck are you?
Thank you very much. Brilliant. I don't know that brilliant ever applied. Beautiful was like decades ago, but thank you very much for
Oh, come on. You're not that advanced in age.
joining.
You're not that far behind me, sir.
Okay. If you say so.
You were born in 61, if I remember correctly, right?
62, yes.
62. Okay, okay. So that's 5 years between us. At any rate, I really wanted you here because we've got a protest coming up at the Ark Encounter in Kentucky coming up this July. And there actually may be two or three people on this planet who don't know what the Ark Encounter is or why we're protesting it. Could you kind of fill everybody in on that?
Well, absolutely, yes. The Answers in Genesis is the leading producer, the most prolific producer, I should say, of pseudoscience propaganda in the world. And they are advocating for a biblical literalism. They want to maintain that the stories in Genesis are absolutely true, right from the very first verse, right? And so the most ridiculous thing in all of that, although Genesis is just chocker block full of absurdities, the the easiest one to disprove, the most absurd story in the whole thing, is the global flood.
Yeah.
In the scientific community, where the science began, how do I put this? It's not that science began this way, but in the 17 and 1800s, there were a whole host of scientists that were looking for, naturalists as they were called at the time,
Yeah.
who were looking for evidence of Noah's flood. And not only did they not find that, but they found a substantial evidence for an ancient Earth and for a number of smaller floods and other catastrophes of different types and different geological strata and so on. So the flood, or for that and many, many reasons, we know that this didn't happen. This is too absurd to consider. As a matter of fact, anybody that's curious about this, I did an 8-part series on how
Yes.
anthropology disproves the flood, how geology disproves the flood, how uh, zoology mythology, archaeology, paleontology, and so on. It's like an 8-part series like this where I explain all these different things that really do disprove the flood, and people want to believe it anyway. Now, the people who do don't really care what the truth is.
Yes, unfortunately.
They just want to believe. They want to make believe, and this makes them feel special. This makes them believe that if they believe that the universe was created by magic, according to the sacred fables and all of that, well, then maybe they can pretend that they won't really die, or that they'll see their loved ones again after they die, that everybody has some magical component to themselves. And there's like no attachment to reality in this whatsoever. But we're not just talking about religion, we're talking about religious extremism, a form of religious extremism called creationism. And one of the more extreme versions of that is young earth creationism, where they deny all evidence of deep time. And basically, they just pretend that the universe was created last Thursday, according to their sacred fables. It's not last Thursday; it's 6,000 years, but it's equally ridiculous.
Yes, indeed it is.
So Adam and Eve were created with the illusion of prior age. So they're both like, I don't know, created as 20-year-olds or something like that. With navels, maybe. What the hell? Why not?
Why not? Yeah. I mean, God put the fossils there too, so.
So the thing, in order to do the make believe, they have to gloss over certain stories, or in the case of Noah's Ark, that's such an eyesore. That one is so absurdly ridiculous. We know that didn't happen, so that's the thing that Answers in Genesis found that they had to defend more than anything else because it's the most absurd, the most easily disproved thing in the whole book. So they wanted to create this visual illusion that the Ark could actually work. So they took the dimensions given in the Bible, which is actually the more recent set, because earlier fables tell similar stories.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, earlier fables tell similar stories, and in some of those earlier fables, the Ark is like a bowl. It's round, and it was literally supposed to mean Ark, as in box or as a carrying device. I mean, this is something you store things in. It's not a boat. But Answers in Genesis made it out to look like a boat. Now think about this for a moment. This Ark has a bow and a keel, and what looks like a rudder, although the rudder doesn't turn.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you need this on a boat that has no means of propulsion
Right.
and no way to steer?
You got it. As far as I remember, wasn't an ark basically a floating box?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be a box, so it wouldn't have a keel and all of that. But they want to create this illusion, so they built this Ark, this called life-size Ark, but it isn't an Ark actually. It is made of wood for the most part. On the imagine the construction methods of 5,000 years ago. This wooden structure, which is entirely stationary, it doesn't have to survive the rigors of the open ocean, especially not during a catastrophic event like this, where you would have incredible surf, and it would be the most deadly storm conditions anybody ever survived. But this boat doesn't have to survive any of that. It just has to sit on the ground, and it's not even a boat. It's a facsimile of a boat. It's a facade.
Yes.
It's a wooden building attached to 3 other buildings on the back side.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things those 3 other buildings do is run the air conditioning system. So this Ark has all this heavy ventilation. There's air conditioning ducts running all through it, which is amusing because the original idea that they had for this was they wanted to put like a zoo on board to show that they could have 2 of all these different kinds of animals on board. And then they realized very quickly that even though they had air conditioning and all these vents, because remember the Bible said that there's only one window. They're allowed one.
Yeah.
Window, that they're supposed to shovel out all the shit every day. So just imagine you've got all these thousands of animals, and you've got 8 people on board with snow shovels apparently, and their full-time job 24/7 is to shovel shit out that one window. Everybody would die of methane poisoning in the first day.
Yeah.
Right away. But so they realized that even with their air conditioning system, they couldn't put animals inside this boat, even though they had more than one window.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't sticking to the Ark dimensions entirely. But even with all of that air conditioning and everything, they still couldn't do it. And even though the boat isn't meant to sail anywhere, it's not meant to move at all the joists and all the beams are connected with steel rivets, nuts and bolts and brackets all through the thing. As you know, they would have had 5,000 years ago, right?
Oh, absolutely. They were forging iron every other block. Definitely.
Well, we're not even talking about iron because this boat facade is made of. It's got steel brackets.
Yeah.
With threaded nuts and bolts. Because who invented threaded nuts and bolts? I'm sure that was around for 5,000 years. Sure.
As a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, nuts and bolts were invented to hold medieval armor together. So, we got a little bit of a time lag.
Just a little bit. So the story is supposed to be, or is popularly interpreted as, one guy 600 years old and his 3 100-year-old sons, and with no shipwright skills, with no know-how, without trucks, and without welding equipment or any of this crap. These guys were supposed to have built this boat by themselves. Absolutely impossible.
Right.
So all kinds of excuses will be made up for this. I mean, Answers in Genesis pretends that these guys had managed to hire thousands of work hands to bring all the materials and everything and assemble all of this. And even if that were the case, we know that the earlier stories of this thing, that the earliest version of this story was King Ziusudra who already had a floating barge on the Tigris Euphrates. He's punting his cattle to town to market. And then there was a huge storm surge around 2900 BCE,
Uh-huh.
wherein his barge ends up being washed out into, what was it, the Persian Gulf? I forgive me. I used to know this, and I don't off the top of
And
my
I
head.
don't have the geography in my head either.
Yeah, but he ends up, so he's quite in a scary situation. He has no means of navigation. He was supposed to only be on a river, and suddenly, the flood came in like it did, and because floods happen along riversides, this occurs.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, the entire area of Iraq is a floodplain. So I mean, we know that floods like this happen periodically, and this one was a particularly bad one that got famous, and it just ended the Jemdat Nasser period and began the next period subsequent to that. And archaeologists have identified this, and geologists have confirmed this. This is what happened. This period of Iraq, this river overflowed, did not affect any of the other surrounding nations, which of course it couldn't.
Right.
And we know that there are elements of history that were already underway before the period of this the mythic flood, and it continued and persevered right on through it. Never even noticed that they'd all drowned to death, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have artifacts of people, for example. We've got occasionally, let's say in South America, is one example that I know where they found archaeological artifacts and bones and everything that date back some 20,000 years, or at least 15,000 years, something in that order. And what makes that interesting is that genetic tests among all of these artifacts that are only like 10,000 years or less, that they managed to get DNA from. The DNA of these ancient people matches the DNA of the people who still live there now.
Okay, so if you'll excuse the expression, the line has run relatively purely. Seems to be no outside groups invading or anything like that.
Well, what it appears is that the people who migrated all along the western coast of North America and South America, that eventually inhabited South America, if those people 15,000 years ago, if their DNA is a match for the people who live there now,
Mm-hmm.
well, then obviously they hadn't all died in a flood and then have some subsequent group come in and re-inhabit that land.
Right, yeah.
There's a genetic relationship there. They are the people who were already there.
Yes.
So, but the people who believe in the Ark don't care about truth or facts or knowledge. They want to make believe. That's what faith is. Faith is literally pretending. Make yourself believe. Fake it till you make it. And I've actually heard a minister describe it exactly that way. To keep telling yourself that it's Jesus until you believe it. And I've very often I've gotten admissions from people. They said, one of my oldest friends has told me that he's Christian because he likes to believe that, not because it's true. Or somebody else might say that, why does it have to be true before I believe it? Why can't I believe it anyway? Why the hell would you want to believe something that isn't even true?
Right.
So there's a fundamental base difference in the people who have a deep-seated emotional need to believe and those who have instead a desire to understand. I don't want to be fooled into believing something that is not true. So I will resist. I will be tentative on anything I do accept that other information could change that perspective, right?
Right.
That I could be wrong about it. There's no way I could be wrong about everything, but I could be wrong about certain details and in a large number of things. And how else are you going to improve? In order for your understanding to improve, you first have to be aware that it's not perfect.
Yes.
And it can improve. Anybody that's claiming absolute truth, obviously, they're not going to be reasoned with on anything. They have absolute truth, and it doesn't matter that it's absolute bullshit. They're going to believe it anyway.
Unfortunately, yeah.
These people tell me, well, these may be what the facts are, but I prefer to believe this. Well, why would I want to believe what you believe? I'd rather believe, but you don't understand. You don't get to choose your reality. Well, they do. There are people who choose to believe whatever the hell they want. I don't have that ability, fortunately, nor would I have that desire, because if I want to understand the way things really are, then I need to make sure that my information is accurate. And if it's not accurate, then it's worthless.
Yeah. Indeed.
Discard it immediately and figure out how to close that gap, or what is the truth. Believers don't have that perspective. So the Ark was created to create this illusion, and the whole thing is basically a museum to creation science, which is of course pseudoscience. It's anti-science.
Indeed, it is.
They play this what they consider to be inspirational music, and they have these placards everywhere, telling people about how the Romans used to ride dinosaurs and all of this kind of crap, and they make up names for all the unnamed characters in the Bible. Like all the wives, one of the wives of Noah's sons is named Ariel. Why? Because one of the kids of one of the people working on the Ark liked Little Mermaid, so they just named Ham's wife or whoever, named her Ariel.
Wow.
That's her name. Why not? If you're going to make this shit up anyway, it doesn't matter. So it really is it literally is a fantasy based on what is literally a fairy tale. I mean, it's a fable with a moral, right? That has folklorish characters and magical enchantments and all this kind of crap. Even if it were true, it would still be a fairy tale by definition. But a lot of people don't care if it is a fairy tale or not. There are people, and I've encountered way too many of them in my life, who think that all perspectives are chosen, that whatever you believe because you make believe. But when I say believe, I mean something that I think is true, but I don't know to be true. That's why I only believe it. And and for me, the word belief is not an act of will like it is for them, where it's not mind over matter like it is for them. So the believers use believe as a conscious act of convincing themselves, the wholly different context. So in order to avoid confusion, I try never to use the word belief at all. Okay, mm-hmm. I think this is true, is what I would prefer to say.
There's somebody in the audience, as a matter of fact, who rather does not like that word belief. Well, it's faith that she doesn't like, actually, but...
I don't like faith either. It's the most dishonest position it is possible to have. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
So I am an epistivist, and what that means is a friend of mine, Kate Farr, made up that word.
That's what I was talking about.
Yep.
She's listening in right now.
Outstanding. Yes, she invented the word epistivist, and that means someone who rejects faith, who considers faith to be, as I said, the most dishonest position. It's certainly not a way to truth, but it's a great way to stay wrong forever and never know it.
Yes, absolutely. And this is something that impresses me. Okay, these people want to believe what they want to believe. They want to have what they want to have. Great. Why can't we leave them to that? Why is the protest so important?
Everything.
So again?
I'm sorry, I cut off your question.
Okay.
My answer is because they own and control everything.
There we go. Yes, this is where I was heading. Why is this protest so important? And as far as that goes, there are some shady things, are there not, connected with this, as far as funding, etc.?
Well, there's all kinds of shady things. There's tax manipulation. There's violations of secular law. There's violations of human rights because they want to claim both that they are nonprofit and religion, but they're also supported by the state, or they want to get the best of both worlds. So, like all churches do, they're not supposed to advocate for political leaders, but ministers and like all these different churches around the country will tell their people exactly how to vote, and that's how the people vote, is exactly how their minister told them to vote.
Yeah.
Usually for emotional motivation. And that's why they're really big about the abortion thing, because the idea of how do you put this? In the Bible, in Numbers 5, it explains that God will endorse and even participate in abortion.
Yes.
On grounds as wispy as charges of infidelity, right? That's the biblical position on it. Abortion is not a problem. Abortion is something you can do for the slightest of reasons. But when you get to paint it as killing babies, well, then you get to ignore things like, the 11-year-old who's been raped and now has to bring a baby to term when the birthing the baby might kill her, and nobody's going to want the bastard child anyway, and the AIDS infected rapist has probably damned them both anyway, and so forth. They don't have to think about any of the subtleties behind that. You get a bumper sticker slogan about killing babies, and now you can unify every church, and they'll all vote for that one issue. And attached to that, they don't even realize is all of this other stuff that they're voting against their own interest, but not even being aware of it.
Yeah, and what really amazed me is a little while ago, I came across an article. Somebody posted it to Twitter. I don't know if you saw this or not, from the Chicago Tribune. It was about 4 years ago, entitled Fertility Clinics Destroy Embryos All the Time. Why don't conservatives jump on them? Something to that effect. And that was a really significant thing to me, where, yeah, it appears that many of the embryos that are produced for in vitro fertilization and which are not used, many or most of them end up destroyed. Now, if life begins at conception, aren't those embryos lives? But they're not complaining about that.
Of course not, and of course, the Bible doesn't support that either. I mean, from initially, from first conception to 45 days, then the fetus is considered only water.
Yeah.
Right, and from that point on until birth, then the developing fetus is considered in the Bible to be no more than a limb of the mother, and specifically, the limb is called thigh. So if you read Numbers 5, and it mentions in the translation that you have, that says the thigh will wither and rot away or fall away or whatever. When it says thigh, don't question whether it's the left or right thigh. Yeah, it's not talking about a thigh. And if you compare that to other translations won't give you that thigh bullshit. Other translations will say that the womb will discharge.
Right.
Yeah, and the what is the word they use? I don't think it's fetus, but it'll say the womb will discharge, and then there's something that will rot and fall away. You just have to compare the different translations.
Yeah, and add to that the woman, I think, becomes barren after that's all
Oh
over,
yeah.
or something like that.
And the argument you get with the Christians all the time is, well, it doesn't say she was pregnant. Like, yeah, it doesn't say she was pregnant, but it doesn't say she wasn't either, which she
Yeah.
most likely would be, since she's being charged with infidelity. And why would a guy challenge that his wife has been unfaithful to him? Because these guys take long trips. They're gone for weeks at a time, right? You can be gone for 3 or 4 months when you get on a boat to Egypt or whatever, and then you come back, and one of your wives is pregnant, and you realize, hey, I haven't been here. How can she be pregnant? So, of course, that's going to be the primary reason. But get the Christian to ask the question, what if she was pregnant? And then she takes this potion that is going to leave her barren. And the only answer I get from Christians was, she wasn't pregnant. Well, what if she was? She wasn't pregnant. Think hypothetically now. But they can't.
Right.
They know. You'll never get an admission because they have to believe a lie, and that means that they have to lie to themselves.
First and foremost. Yeah, because I take it the best liars are those who believe their own lies.
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
And as far as that goes, do I take it that our friend Mr. Ham, I think you already alluded to it a little bit earlier, has a great deal of control over things that go on, well, not only in his little corner of the universe, but when you come down to it nationwide, really, with some of the
Well, he has a lot of direct control over the school boards and educational facilities in his immediate area. He exerts a lot of political influence in Kentucky.
No.
Beyond that, I mean, he was in Texas one time teaching he showed up here as the keynote speaker in the Texas Homeschool Association. Now, you've got a young Earth creationist speaking at Texas Homeschool Association. Then obviously homeschool is not remotely about education.
Right.
It's really about indoctrination. You want your kids to avoid forbidden knowledge. You want them to be taught make-believe. You want them to be taught fairy tales. No, they'll never admit that faith equals make believe and Genesis equals fairy tales, but that's the literal truth.
And okay, here's the thing, though. With the protest about that, who is the protest intended to reach? I mean, obviously, it's not going to reach Ham and his minions and those who are totally committed to the lie. Who's the message for?
It's changing the narrative. So initially, when they opened this ark, they were getting all this news press that they were building an ark, and it was looking very positive. But then a number of people associated with American Atheists and other activist organizations got together to start these protests, and they got more press than the Ark construction did. And so they started advocating that that the Ark Park is really a incest and genocide celebration.
Which it really is.
Exactly. So I mean, and what kind of inefficiency do we have where a God, first of all, can see everything in the future and knew when he built Adam that he was going to have to kill everybody when they surprised him and disappointed him? Well, how can you be disappointed or surprised? Why would you ever say, oh, well, I screwed up, I'm going to have to wipe the slate clean and start all over again? This is not an omnipotent being that or certainly not omniscient. This is not somebody that can see the future, right?
Right, absolutely.
So if God ever made the mistake and had to wipe everybody out and start all over again, well, then he's admitting an error. He's not omniscient and he's not infallible. And if you have to kill every fawn in North America because a handful of people in the Middle East pissed you off, well, then you're using the least, using the most broad-brushed and least efficient means of eliminating these people. Now, remember, this is a guy who could do the Thanos trick, who can snap his fingers and just vaporize whoever in the Middle East is pissing him off, and he leaves the rest of his creation just fine.
Yeah.
But that's not what he does, right? He does the impossible thing. And why does he do the impossible thing? Because not only in Iraq, where they had that one significant flood, but in a number of different places, like the Black Sea flooded significantly 7,000 years ago, and the Sea of Galilee flooded significantly around 15,000 years ago. So a lot of these places will have dramatic flood legends, except Japan for some reason. And I think it has been surmised that the reason that Japan doesn't have flood legends is because it's too real for them. Because they have so often, if that's real shit, you don't even joke about that. So
they're inundated every other week. Yeah.
What's the only way that you can exaggerate a flood story? Doesn't matter if you're in Cameroon or wherever the hell you are. How are you going to well, actually, there was a place in Africa where the flood legend is that it was a flood of beer. So that was but other versions are different. Say, like in one place, and I can't remember where it is, the only survivors were a man and a woman who survived the flood because they hid inside a seashell that remained afloat, and that all the animals who drowned turned into fish during the flood, and then when the floodwaters receded, they turned back into their former selves again.
Nice trick.
So the flood legends are not all telling the same story,
Mm-hmm.
but the one detail that remains the same all the time is that, well, the only way to exaggerate it to its most ridiculous proportions is that the whole world floods. So everybody will tell the story that the whole world floods. All the other details will be completely different.
And you're talking about getting things built and in the press and that sort of thing. Isn't there a little bit of a story? Part of the money raising for the Ark Encounter involved having a certain Mr. Nye Debate Ken Ham. And if I remember correctly, is it not the case that was not supposed to be Bill Nye standing there?
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned that Ken Ham had come into Houston, Texas, to speak at the Texas Homeschool Association. At that time, Houston Atheists, the largest geographic atheist organization in the world, 22,000 members at that time, challenged Ken Ham to have a debate, and they chose me as their champion. So it was going to be me versus Ken Ham. And my stipulation was that we were going to do it in the Houston Museum of Natural Science, and that neither of us could make a profit off of it. That was it, because I knew all he's interested in is money.
Oh, so, indeed.
So screw that. We sink his boat without giving him a dime. Well, of course, Ham was not going to do that. He said he would only debate people who had a PhD. So P.Z. Myers put his PhD on the table and says, "I'll debate Ken Ham on one condition: Aron Ra stays in as my partner." All communication stopped.
I have no idea why that would happen.
And it was, I want to say it was on the order of about 4 months later. It could have been a little bit longer, but I want to say it's about 4 months later that we heard that Bill Nye was going to debate Ken Ham. And while Nye did an excellent job,
Yes, he did.
he agreed that he missed the key thing that I did. I mean, he didn't see that Ham's whole goal was as a money-making operation. So Nye agreed to do it on Answers in Genesis' own turf, so that just in ticket sales for the debate itself, Answers in Genesis made, I think it was $20,000 just in ticket sales for that evening. Period.
Okay.
Just to fill the seats they had in their own sanctuary, and Ken Ham losing that debate to such a famous person was so embarrassing that it actually prompted a lot of people to go into that. What do they call that when you prove somebody's position wrong and then they dig their heels in and they're gonna double down on it.
Oh,
Right?
is it the backfire effect?
Backfire effect. Yes. So Ken Ham lost miserably. Even there was a Christian organization, that was Christian Science Monitor. I can't remember what the hell it was. It was Christianity Today, whatever it was. They had this poll on who was winning the debate, and 92% of their Christian following said that Ken Ham lost.
Oh,
That Bill Nye beat, and 92% of the Christian followers. So there you go. So that was so embarrassing that investors coughed up a bunch of money, and Ken Ham managed to make, because he wasn't going to do the Ark. It wasn't going to happen. He did the Bill Nye debate, and he got enough sympathy from his millionaire donors who have more money than sense, literally, that they forked over all this money, and now it's $100 million fiasco, but it exists.
yeah. And the other problem with that, I think we touched on earlier, there is the government money coming into this thing, and he maintains that he did not receive $1 to build the Ark, which, if I remember correctly, is technically true, is it not? Uh-huh.
He was supposed to receive $18 million in tax subsidies from the state. But then he realized that he was going to have to pay something in order to get that, and they didn't want to pay anything. So he sold the Ark property. Now, mind you, the property was given to him, donated. So he paid nothing. And then he tried to sell all of this to himself for like $5 in order to I don't know, get out of having to pay whatever he was going to pay.
Oh, that wasn't.
Because
Wasn't.
they want to be unfair. They want to get the best of both worlds and not have any responsibility for anything. That's the goal of Christianity, is to ignore all responsibility. You don't have to be responsible for anything. You don't have to do you don't have to repair anything you've done. You just get to pretend that your magic imaginary friend forgives you, and of course he would, because he's your imaginary friend. And then you can say, and people have, I don't have to go to jail for this crime of molesting my little sister because Jesus has forgiven me. I've seen that defense multiple times.
Oh, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really impressed that they do that. But we also don't have to worry about the environment, because it doesn't matter how much damage we do to our environment, because Jesus will be back any minute now to roast it all anyway. So I mean, you can just be unresponsible for anything. Does not matter. Bring as many souls to the Lord as you possibly can, even if you can't feed them. Doesn't matter. If you want to shirk all responsibility for anything and do whatever the hell you want, be Christian. That seems to be the goal of that organization.
Indeed. Now, just out of curiosity, I take it you're in contact with the organizers, that sort of thing. You are going to be there, are you not?
I am.
You are. What other sorts of things? I mean, how is this thing constructed, the protest itself? I mean, what happens when you get there?
Oh, I'm not organizing anything. The organizers have shown that they
Okay.
do thing.
Yeah, I don't know if they had told you what was
Well,
going on or anything.
they've never involved me in the planning, but nor did they have to, because they have greater expertise in this than I do.
Okay.
Year after year, they put this thing together, and they've always done a great job. That was Tri-State Freethinkers.
Yes.
that usually arranges that protest, and they do a great job of that. And they make sure that the press is aware of what they're doing, and so they always get they always get a good mark in the news for it.
Okay, so this sounds pretty good. And I take it that we can expect some of the opposition to be there as well, and
I wouldn't.
hopefully. Say again?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
Now, here's the reason why. I mean, a handful of stragglers will venture out, and I mean, every year there've been like 2 or 3 people that will show up to the protest, and then they'll try to do their apologetics. But it's so bad. I mean, they always have to tuck tail. When have you ever seen? When has it ever happened that a religious apologist has been able to present a reasonable argument that would compel people on the fence watching the conversation between the believer and the non-believer? When has that ever occurred, ever in history?
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't. I mean, it's always abject failure every single time, always, without exception. Even when they do debates where they feel that they're strong, if you went in already believing in this poppycock, well, then you're going to walk out refusing to change your mind no matter what you heard. But anybody that's uncertain, anybody that cares about what the truth is, anybody that might be objective at all, anybody on the fence is going to watch that discussion and realize who's got the goods and who's full of shit. And that's just obvious all the time. So what they usually do is they avoid us at all costs. They don't have organized meetings with us at all. Matter of fact, this last time around, we did American Atheist National Convention in Cincinnati, and
Yes.
the reason for that was because it was going to be in close proximity to Noah's Ark, because Cincinnati's only like 20-minute drive away from where the Ark Park is. And the Answers to Genesis, the Ark Park people, I think they call it Ark Encounter, they created this thing called Answering Atheists.
Oh, I remember them saying something about that.
Yeah, and so the deal was that it had nothing to do with answering atheists. It wasn't even to do with hearing their questions. So it was a handful of people giving lectures to believers, and 1 or 2 of those lectures they would allow atheists in if you could show ID to prove that you're an atheist. Do you have your atheist ID card on you?
Wait a minute. Where did I put my purse?
Yeah, in order to get in free, you had to show ID that proves you're an atheist. And I do have a handful of skeptic cards. I am a card-carrying skeptic. I could probably produce that, but it doesn't have my name or a picture on it. So what is that even about? But even if you could get into the one or 2 things where the atheist would get in for free, there's no two-way conversation, because they know how that inevitably always goes. So they command the narrative. All the atheists would have to sit down in the pews and shut up and listen. And all recordings, all cameras, all microphones are going to be on the Christian speaker on stage. And they will never hear or publish any interaction, because they know they got nothing. They lose every time. Every time.
And in here, I was almost kind of hoping to see some more fireworks of the sort I remember from, was it last year or the year before, where you and the younger Hovind were going at it? I remember, apes don't have tails, learn taxonomy. That's the favorite
I try
part.
to avoid that guy, but he keeps showing up at things that I'm at. So
I don't know. You would almost think he had a radar going or something like that.
Well, I mean, they find out. I mean, he was at both of the Reason rallies, 2012 and 2016, and I ran into him at both of those events, and he showed up at that Texas homeschool thing, and then, of course, he shows up at our protest at the Ark Park when that first happened. I don't expect to see him again. Conversations between he and I have consistently always gone way heavy my side.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, now his game, and this is what I think is funny, is his game is to interview people and get them on camera and on microphone and then edit it in embarrassing ways later. But that's hard to do when you're at a thing where there's like a bunch of press cameras. And so he doesn't get to do the editing on what ends up on the news. So when the news story comes out and it's a picture of me and him, Christian fundamentalist humiliated by atheists. That's the headline.
That's the one I was almost going to cite. Yeah.
What the hell is Eric Hovind going to do to edit that in his favor? There's no way. It's because all the press are reporting what is really happening and not what the Christians are trying trying to misrepresent. And when I say Christian, by the way, I don't want people to get confused. I don't isolate Christians. In this case, Eric Hovind is a Christian. Answers in Genesis exclusively Christian. I don't advocate. I don't have a campaign against Christianity. My issue is against religion in general, and the reason for that is because religion is based on faith. Faith is the failure. Faith is the ultimate sin that we need to get away from. Faith is believing in lies, making believe in lies. It is walking away from rationality. It is irrational beliefs by definition. So, and it is said before, the most dishonest position it is possible to have. So it means lying to yourself and others. So that's what I'm against is faith. And people will want to say very often that, why do I attack Christianity? Why don't I attack Muslims? I do.
And yes, I've heard you do it.
Out of my way, but I don't isolate one or the other. I mean, when I'm reading the Quran, I'm obviously dealing with Muslims exclusively in that topic. But then in places like Answers in Genesis, now we're dealing exclusively with Christians and not necessarily just faith-based beliefs. So I want people to understand that before they, mislabel their criticisms.
Yeah, and as far as the faith thing goes, what amazes me, well, it really shouldn't amaze me, is the way people misuse that word, trying to equivocate, the question that has been posed to you. I've heard it, do you have faith in your wife? Now, that's a very different thing.
Completely different context. 'Tis true.
Yeah.
And that context, by the way, doesn't appear in the Bible. So in the dictionary, you'll get two contexts, where one is faith is just trust, and then you also get the religious context, which is the context that you get in the Bible. At no point in the Bible does it describe faith as being something that you just trust, because there are reasons that you trust things. I trust that my wife is faithful because I have a history with her that she has built up that trust. We've shown a pattern of behavior that implies that she's going to stick with that pattern of behavior. I have evidence for that trust. And faith, they want to pretend that, God has always been with. No, you just pretend. God's never done dick for you. You just pretend that he does.
And that's the amazing thing to me, is that people give God the credit no matter what happens. The child survives the disease. Oh, thank God. God is so good. The child dies of that disease. Oh, well, he's in a better place. The whole flood, natural disaster victim thing. People thanking God for their own survival when their neighbors around them were completely devastated. Some of them killed, that sort of thing. And it's like, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
So it's...
I can't answer that question. I have to take it as rhetorical.
Yeah, it's basically, yeah, well, not basically, it is a rhetorical question. It just amazes me how these people do it. And I guess it's one of the first things that I lost in my deconversion process. But I suppose that would be a tale for another time. And I know, okay, we've got about 49 minutes to the hour here, and you are an extremely busy person, so I'm not necessarily going to expect that you stay around for an after show or anything like that, because I take it that you've got so many other things to do that it's...
Yeah, and then there's also, today is Mother's Day.
Yeah. So just to let everybody on the side know, it's unfortunate, guys, but hey, sometimes it's the way these things run. Now, what sorts of things do you have coming up in the near future?
Well, I'm a week from today, I will be in Scotland, and then a week from Monday, I'll be in London, filming a bit part in an indie film.
Oh my!
Yeah, they want me to. The producer of this movie has made another movie before this that I found quite amusing, and so I have hopes for this one. He wants me to play a paranoid conspiracy theorist named Preacher. and he let me write all my own lines.
Oh no.
Yeah, the trouble is I wrote a rant of slightly over 500 words, and I have to be able to deliver this rant off the top of my head without looking at notes on set. So, yeah, I better pack that away in my brain.
Yeah. I mean, at least when you're doing talks, you've got the notes there. You've got the PowerPoint stuff going on. You can
Exactly,
look
but I'm
at.
going to have to do some serious rehearsal for this because it's got to be fast, it's got to be fluid, and it's got to be in character without any reference, and it's just got to flow. So that'll be a bucket of chuckles. Yeah, I'm in this movie. Well, I can't tell you what I'm going to do because that'll be spoilers. So never mind.
Okay, but you will have an IMDb entry, huh?
I already have one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm in a few films now. I was in my IMDb notes me as being in John Christie's My Week in Atheism and a couple of other documentary films. There was another movie where I played someone other than myself, and that movie was the worst film I've ever seen, and that's saying something because
Oh no.
I'd already seen all the movies in MST3K before there was an MST3K because I just like really cheesy, stupid, bad films. But this was unredeemable. I mean, probably the best thing about this movie was that the bad guy was 300 pounds and naked, apart from a World War One helmet, on top of which he had a rubber dildo mashed onto the spike.
There are some
That's
people.
the best part of that. The movie was called The Zombie Christ. Not to be confused with Zombie Christ without the "the" in front of it, because Zombie Christ took place more in, I think, in 2,000 years ago, but the Zombie Christ takes place in an 80s post-apocalyptic future where it's a battle between bikers and zombies.
Okay. I'll
And
just let that sink
and
in.
Jesus is largely decaying and has green skin.
Oh my word! Now, are any of the Jerusalem zombies in there too? The ones that popped out of the ground when the Jesus character allegedly died?
Oh no, there's no other traditional characters.
Okay.
Because this is a future. This is like Jesus came back, but as a zombie. Yeah.
Oh my. Okay. Morton Nielsen asks, "Was the dildo purple?" Uh, this
I don't think so. I don't think.
this is a little bit of a reference. I don't know if you've ever had the time or the inclination to watch something called Movie Night. In the Eastern Time Zone, it's Friday, the midnight between Friday and Saturday, and our dear friend Strike in the side chat runs this, and he basically finds the worst pseudoscientific videos that can ever be imagined, and we review them.
Ah, okay. That sounds like fun, actually.
Especially the way we do it. He calls it a drinking show with a science problem. It's like a drinking game. When you find something so egregious that you just have to say something, you yell "drink," and then you go around the horn, everybody explaining why they call
I
him.
gotta tell you something about the guy that was making the movie that I'm going to be in on Monday. The previous movie that he made
Okay.
was a parody of what if atheism really was the religion that Christians make it out to be. So
Ah,
there are people going door to door to preach Darwin's theory of evolution, for example. Yeah,
it's
the
beautiful.
movie is called. It has two titles. One, the primary title is called "Learning Hebrew," which makes no damn sense to me. But the other, more appropriate title, I think, is "Gothsploitation."
Oh my, that's an interesting play. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I thought it was amusing. The movie is a little bit on the weird side of bizarre, but yeah,
Oh my! And I don't know, anything you've got you want to close with, or
Uh,
anything off the top of your head?
I don't have any other projects off the top of my head except the ones that I'm still working on. Uh, Episode 40 of my Systematic Classification of Life series is coming out today.
Oh,
Uh,
yay!
that
So
will
I'm going to
be
be looking
that
for
will be
that.
published within an hour, I would think. And then I don't have any apart from the Ark protest in July. I don't have another speaking gig until I think like October. So I'll be able to recoup from traveling for other reasons because I have to travel for other reasons too, and so I'm kind of always on the move. But I don't mind because I enjoy travel a lot. All my life I've been on road trips and that sort of thing. Just
Okay.
yeah,
Just do your best to take Alejandra with you, and that way she doesn't get too lonely, right?
yeah, yeah.
But I am going to thank you.
Oh, yeah. The one thing I should close with
Okay,
is
fine.
I've been doing this full time. In a very lucky position that I can do it full time. But yeah, support myself on Patreon, as I know a lot of other content creators do. Patreon.com/ARONRA. And I really do need, I don't make a lot of money doing this. I'm able to sustain, but just barely. So I really do need all the help I can get. So I make 6 videos a month. If you want to donate whatever for 6 videos, just multiply whatever amount you want to give by 6. That's what you give a month.
Okay, guys, in the side chat and in the rewatch, who are not here yet, but will see this because there are keywords all over the place in this thing. You heard what the man said. Send him your life savings, okay?
I am trying my best to be the hardest working atheist activist that there is, and I do try to make sure that my values are high and that I have as much an impact as I possibly can. So I don't just do things on YouTube. I also do. I've given testimony to the State House and to the Board of Education, and I do a lot of protests and holding up picket signs and that sort of thing for a lot of different types of things, and that's where a lot of my travel comes from. I want the atheist movement to actually be noticed. We are the largest demographic with respect to religion in this country. We outnumber evangelicals now.
That is the amazing thing.
It is, and we're still the fastest growing demographic. We've already passed them, so we're bigger than them, and we only passed them like 3 months ago. But the thing is, we still don't have any respect from our central government because we're not unified. We don't do that single issue voting thing because what the hell else? What do we agree on? Other than the fact that there is no God. One thing we should all agree on is that we want secular politics. We don't want to have religious laws forced on us, and that is what's happening nationwide.
Yes, you've noticed that.
Yes,
And it's
and we need to be unified at least on that. And I do everything I can to try to make sure that atheists have a voice politically and not just on YouTube.
the state of my birth, unfortunately, has done a great disservice to women. With
Ohio or Georgia?
Ohio, with their abortion bill.
Yeah, that was when I saw the news. I saw the headline. Do you think that an 11-year-old who was raised by
Yes,
an AIDS-infected father should carry the baby to term? Well, Ohio believes that.
that's what came to my mind when you were describing that, and yeah, that just burned me. Yeah, got my panties into a twist. Let's put it that way. And the unfortunate thing is that it is so difficult to reverse these mindsets because, okay, if I may, you get Trump out of the White House. That's one thing. You get Pence out with him. That's another thing. You
Supreme
get
Court.
the say again, please.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's the next thing.
You're already screwed
Yeah,
by the Supreme Court, and now the Supreme Court is now hostile to justice because of this last election. Had a number of people been able to swallow their pride and vote D where they wanted to vote in protest and vote T instead, well, thanks. You are the reason that our Supreme Court is now fucked.
Yeah, and I will not live
Yeah,
to
fuck
see
for
the end of
decades.
it.
Yeah,
So,
fucked for decades
yeah.
now, because the religious right have the majority now for the first time uh, in many decades.
Mm-hmm. And then even if you could magically change the Supreme Court like that, you've got the state legislatures to worry about. And worse than that, you have the electorate itself.
And I got to tell you, the reason that I became an activist, back around Y2K, was because I was hearing from evangelicals who were bragging about how politically active they were, how they were running for and getting elected to and electing select people to particular offices, judges and magistrates and city council and the board of education and all that, because they were explaining their grassroots program to take over the entirety of our government incrementally by electing their own people to all these positions, especially judges and senators, so that when cases like Kitzmiller versus Dover come to trial, they expected that decision to go another way. That was part of a 5-year plan that had
Yes.
been that was part of a plan that had been initiated more than 5 years earlier, and somehow the conservative Christian right wing Republican Bush appointed judge still ruled like a proper judge, and that surprised all the people that got him in position in the first place. Otherwise, imagine where we'd be now. That's how close we are in this shit. So atheists need to be represented in politics, and now we are. I mean, there were 9 atheists who won seats in Arizona in the last couple of years, and think about how red Arizona is.
Oh, yeah, indeed.
So we are getting atheists who are open about it. I went to the Democratic Party convention here in Texas, in Fort Worth, and they held this one room for a secular caucus. And I was expecting there to be a half a dozen people because it's Texas, and what kind of a secular caucus can you have? But there were 300 people staffed into that room. They were standing room only. They'd exceeded the number of chairs, and they had, I want to say, 4 political candidates to admit to being atheist. And not all of them won, but I mean, some of them did. There was at the least, I think, 8 or 9 candidates up there, and one of them, who professed to be Christian, had also started a secular student alliance when he was just starting his college. So
Okay.
we do have some representation, but we are outnumbered, outgunned, outfinanced. We are completely overpowered, but we do have the truth on our side. And it's the real truth, because it's not something you have to believe. It's something we can actually prove. We don't need your faith. We can show it despite your faith. So that's about the only advantage we've got.
And let's hope that it carries us for at least until we can manage to do something else.
Yeah, all other politics aside, let's just make sure that the laws are secular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see Sidestrike saying we've got a culture of lawlessness in politics at the moment. This could easily allow religion to creep into public policy even further.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got to be very
I
careful.
want people to know that, I mean, I am unapologetically on the left, but I am not the stereotype that a lot of people want to make up. I can justify my position, and I don't judge people on purity tests. There is nobody that I agree with about everything. They're and I will find the strengths in the people that I disagree with about some significant things. There are places where I agree, and that person will be a significant ally, and so I will use that. And that's what I would like to see us all do.
Indeed, and it's only just too bad that the press ignored you when you were making your run for Texas State Senate.
That was bad. It was so overwhelming. I mean, I managed to I raised very little money for my campaign, and the opponent was given a check for over $1 million. When in a normal election period, you'd need 30,000, and he was given one check. He had over $2 million for his campaign, but most of that came in one check.
Oh, for the love of Saint Gulick, that is just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you compete with that? Right? I'm in a district where the best the Democrats have ever done is 19% of the vote.
Okay,
Yeah,
then.
hopeless. It was hopeless anyway. I just wanted there to be opposition because in previous election cycles, the Republican has always run unopposed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
in this case, there was another guy running who actually had a realistic shot, and so
Yeah.
I just passed everything over to him. I mean, he actually wanted the job. It wouldn't have done me any favors to get that job. It really wouldn't have. It actually would have hurt me.
How did he
But
do?
not well. Like I said, the best they've ever done is 19% of the vote. You can't win with that.
Oh, right. I just okay then. So,
And I
looks
don't
like
intend to do it again. I
yeah,
like to tell people that I've been in politics just long enough to know that I don't want to be in politics. But it suits other people. And if you can take the small offices, school board, city council, any of these, I can tell you horror stories just about corrupt city council members being overtly religious and unapologetically so because there's no one checking them. They get to say all these little platitudes and they know they're going to get a volley of amens just like they're in a church. But we need to get some people that are represented out there that where they know, where these legislators and representatives know this isn't going to fly with that guy. So this isn't going to fly with this whole room.
mm-hmm. Okay then. So I guess we can wrap this kind of up because I see it's a little past the top of the hour, and I want so very much to thank you for coming on Coffee with Lavender, giving
my
us
pleasure.
giving us your wisdom. It's been a great honor to have you here, and I want to thank you profusely. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no worries. I had fun. It was a good time.
Oh, well, danke schön. And okay then, to everybody who is here and everybody who is not here, may I, as usual, say, thanks a lot, troops. See you on the other side.